Hold on just a second, Gene. I think this might be Spot the Wonder Dog.
Who else could it be, Roger?
You're right. It is Spot the Wonder Dog, and every time he leaps into the balcony, it's time to announce for the Dog of the Week when each of us picks the week's worst movie.
Well, my dog is a gang film called Sunnyside, starring Joey Travolta, John's younger and less talented brother. It's a Saturday Night Fever ripoff set in a New York neighborhood. Joey Travolta, like his brother in Fever, is the leader of a small gang that gets into a dispute with another more violent gang.
Sounds familiar.
And is in Fever, Joey has a girlfriend who wants him to get out of his rough neighborhood and then move back into Manhattan.
Sounds even more familiar.
I think you're going to love it here. And you know, exclusive apartments aren't easy to find.
So what we've got here is a double ripoff, a weak imitation of Saturday Night Fever, played by an actor who is a weak imitation of the Saturday Night Fever star.
You could have gotten your ass killed. Denny, you hear too much.
Hey, that's not the way, Nick.
I'll take care of my business.
You know, you really have to have a low opinion of the audience to try and pull off a fast one like Sunnyside.
I've got a movie that has a much lower opinion of the audience. My dog this week is called The Dark, and it is the dumbest science fiction movie ever made, I think. It's sort of a police movie about a killer named the Mangler. Now, he could also be the director, by the way. He stalks the city by night and tears people's heads off.
What kind of a freak tears people's heads off?
He turns out to be a sort of Jack the Ripper from outer space, and he can tear down brick walls and smash through doors. And he fries people with psychedelic lightning bolts that zap out of his eyeballs. What great fun.
All right, so a girl got murdered. What else is new?
Not only do we never figure out what the monster is or where he came from or why, but at the end we can't even figure out what happened to him. That's in spite of the fact that an announcer comes on and tells us,
of the millions of possible alien confrontations, man has had his first. An encounter for which he has no understanding or explanation.
Now, my dog this week involves another trick, putting a new title on an old film. In 1974, an Italian sex comedy called Malizia was released. It wasn't very successful, but its young female star, the beautiful Laura Antonelli, has now gone on to become quite a sex symbol in such new films as The Innocent and Wife Mistress. So Malizia has been trotted out again, but retitled Malicious. Unfortunately, it's still the same old Malizia. The high point in the picture, of course, comes when Laura Antonelli takes off her clothes in front of that little kid. And that lasts about 5 or 6 minutes. Unfortunately, Malizia, or Malicious, it lasts nearly 100.
at least your movie had a nude scene with Laura Antonelli.
Yeah.
My dog this week only has a kissing scene with Valerie Bertinelli. It's called Chomps, which stands for Canine Home Protection System, and it's a slow-moving, badly acted imitation Disney picture in which Bertinelli, who was from TV's One Day at a Time, plays the girlfriend of a young scientist who's locked himself into the garage and invented a computerized watchdog.
Watch this.
Ryan, what are you doing?
There you are.
You built a watchdog.
An electronic watchdog. Computerized, self-activating mobile crime deterrent, unlike any watchdog that ever existed.
What a great dog, huh? Man's best computer. It has all sorts of built-in scientific gadgets, like, for example, it can see through solid walls. Not only can it bark, but it can also make the sounds of machine guns and train whistles.
Chomps is chasing a pickup!
Now that's what I call an original invention.
Chomps, what is it?
That dog's so smart, I'll bet it's even housebroken.
My dog is an action picture called Ravagers, one of the end-of-the-world films when the last man on Earth keeps running into new people. Following some sort of nuclear holocaust, Richard Harris stumbles through a deserted town, finds a blind man who gets hit in the head with rocks.
Just listen to me for a second. No, this.
Then he meets Ann Turkel, who chases Harris into the woods, where she tells him, "I've been following you since yesterday." Harris asks, "What the hell for?" Turkel says,
Why the hell do you think?
Then the last man on Earth meets more people. Art Carney is a nuclear engineer. And then, of course, the Ravagers, a ragtag mob The more you destroy them, the larger their number. None of these characters is particularly interesting, sort of makes you wish that Richard Harris really was the last man on Earth.
My dog is called In Praise of Older Women. Now, what do they mean by older women? It's a little ridiculous. This movie ought to be called In Faint Praise of Girls in Their Mid-30s. The women in question just can't get enough of our hero, Tom Berenger, who makes his way from bed to bed as he immigrates from war-torn Hungary to sex-mad Canada. The movie's supposed to be about how older women are wiser and more mature and more understanding than Tom Berenger is. But if the older women in this movie have any insights into the mysteries of the universe, they keep them to themselves. And, for that matter, why shouldn't they? In this movie, that's the only thing they keep to themselves.
Yes, and my dog of the week is the latest Bruce Lee ripoff. Why won't producers let that man lie in peace? Profit is why. Everybody's been trying to find the new Bruce Lee after he died in 1973. Game of Death takes a 6-minute fight sequence Lee filmed with basketball star Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and builds a whole movie around it. Now the fight's okay, but after you've seen that, you've seen the whole movie. What goes on before is just another stupid mobster picture with a stuntman doubling for Lee and with the director of Game of Death intercutting shots of the real Bruce Lee taken from other movies. So Game of Death is worse than a dog. It's fraudulent filmmaking.
My dog of the week this week is a so-called comedy named Summer Camp about a group of aging adolescents with IQs of, about -17. They spend the summer throwing pillows, pies, and themselves at each other.
Please be reminded that our laboratory system here is only suited for normal use. Any abnormal use of the facilities will result in problems.
And the movie sounds like a ripoff of Meatballs. But, no, it was made before Meatballs. It was released afterwards, though, because it was so lousy it couldn't get distributed without riding in on another film's coattails.
Let's get to work and save Camp Malibu!
So Summer Camp is technically about as bad as a movie can be and still be called a movie, and the actors seem about as talented as losers on a game show. But thanks to Meatballs, Summer Camp does set at least one record. It's the first ripoff that was ever made before the original.
Now here's a horror film double bill playing at drive-ins all over the country. Cemetery Girls is one feature, coupled with Grave Desires. Now when I went to the drive-in, Grave Desires was on first. Maybe I should have stayed to see Cemetery Girls. It couldn't have been worse. Grave Desires is a cheaply made Italian picture about a busload of tourists who wind up stranded in a strange, deserted town. Well, it turns out all the people who live in the town only come out at night, and then they eat all the tourists. Grave Desires has some hocus pocus involving a little boy who keeps appearing and disappearing around a gravestone. But when he puts a little girl in a grave, that's when I started my car and left the drive-in playing Grave Desires.
My dog this week is a disgusting, violent, mean-spirited thriller from England called Terror. And the ads for it show a terrified woman being prodded by giant knife blades, and I'm afraid that's an all-too-accurate image for this film. This movie hates women. It gives us gruesome chase scenes and gory close-ups as a mysterious killer stalks his victims, and the screen is soaked with blood. The audience is stunned with one slashing knife attack after another. Terror is an insult to our intelligence. It thinks we won't care about the characters unless they're murdered on a regular basis, and this is a vile film.
Sounds terrible. You bet, Spot. Well, my dog is named Patrick. That's the title of a cheap horror film with lofty pretensions. It's a story of Patrick, sort of a human vegetable who's lost most of his senses, but he's developed psychokinetic powers while being kept alive, flat on his back in a hospital bed, by all sorts of fancy medical equipment. He's supposed to have been in a coma now for 3 years, but what do you know? He isn't in a coma. He can communicate through spitting. to a pretty new nurse. One spit means yes, two spits means no. What a marvelous dinner guess this guy would make. Like some more roast beef? He gets jealous of the nurse's boyfriend and he eventually asks her to choose either the boyfriend, a successful, handsome neurosurgeon, or choose bedridden Patrick. Some choice. Is it going to be Patrick, yes, or Patrick, no? Well, my whole vote on the whole film is decidedly.
In that twilight world between life and death, Patrick is preparing his very own day of judgment.
My dog this week is entitled Up from the Depths. It's an Il Sleazo cheapo ripoff of Jaws, in which vacationers at the beach get involved in a running battle with a giant shark.
Imagine yourself on a dream vacation, sipping Mai Tais, surfing at Waikiki, basking in the warm Hawaiian sun, swimming in the tropical ocean. Your vacation is about to end. Beneath these waves lies a horror beyond imagining, hungry for human flesh, eating its way up from the depths.
But I say it's their own fault for being stupid enough to jump into the water after. Why can't they just stay on the beach and throw frisbees at each other?
Say, dinner will be ready at sunset. Is everybody having a good time?
Look at that. Blue skies, blue water, a good drink, and no wife.
And here's another question. How do they plan to catch the shark? You're going to love this one. After one guy is killed by the shark, his pals tie a rope around his waist and drag him behind their boat using his body as shark bait. Well, one of the women on board is a little bit disturbed and might even say she's disgusted by this maneuver.
No, you're not going to do this. You can't do that. It's not right.
You didn't know him, lady. He'd have wanted it like this.
You never really see the shark very well, by the way. The ads kind of make him look like Jaws 3, but in the movie he looks a lot more like a killer catfish in a muddy bathtub.
There they go. They'll be back by Christmas.
We'll say to that one, too.